Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera semua. So kita continue with the next topic, which is 8.2b, buoyant force. This is only a subtopic, small subtopic inside 8.2, which is effect of force. So jom kita tengok the first one. What is buoyant force? So dalam bahasa Melayu, buoyant force adalah daya apungan. Anything that can float lah, apa-apa saja boleh terapung, definitely dia is supported by buoyant force. So now kita ambil the first situation here. Kita ada rubber ducky here, rubber duck. Bila kita letak dalam water, what happen? This rubber duck akan float. So why object boleh float? Why object float? So the first thing first is that an object will float if buoyant force equal or more than the weight of an object. So buoyant force ni adalah daya apungan. Weight semestinya kita kena measure in a Newton. Alright, buoyant force pun dalam Newton. So bila kita tengok dekat sini, okay, bila kita tengok, weight always bertindak ke arah bawah. Okay, and buoyant force always opposite the direction of weight. So di sini kita tengok buoyant force 10 Newton, weight also 10 Newton. Disebabkan they have equal, dia adalah sama, maka buoyant force is enough to support the weight. Apabila buoyant force enough to support the weight of this rubber duck, so this rubber duck will float. And always remember, sometimes question dia tak bagi dalam bentuk Newton, dia bagi dalam bentuk mass. So you yourself kena change it into weight. Macam mana? Kalau you dapat mass, you just time by 10 sahaja, and then you boleh dapat dalam bentuk Newton. From kg to Newton, we want to change it, we just times 10. Now, kita tengok pula the second situation. Why an object submerge? Ataupun senang cakap objek sink lah, kenapa dia boleh tenggelam. So here kita ambil case here dekat sini, batu, stone. Kenapa stone ni boleh tenggelam? An object will submerge if buoyant force less than the weight. Buoyant force tak cukup. Buoyant force kurang daripada weight. In this case, buoyant force is 5 Newton and our weight is 10 Newton. So you can see here that buoyant force is more than the weight. Maka buoyant force is not enough to support the weight. Apabila not enough, what happen? This stone will sink or submerge. Now, we go to the next thing. Buoyancy. Keapungan. Ini adalah keapungan. Right. So, buoyancy ada 3 types yang you kena faham. First type is a positive buoyancy. Second, neutral buoyancy. And negative buoyancy. Apa maksud dia? Nah, kita tengok dulu positive. Positive buoyancy is when your buoyant force is more than weight. So, bila kita letak objek, this is your weight. Bila kita letak objek, alright, since buoyant force is more than the weight, what happen? Your object akan float on the water. Nampak? Dia float di atas. Tapi if your buoyancy is neutral, means your buoyant force is equal to the weight. Dia ada 2 type. Satu, your object will float at a certain distance dalam water ni. Lagi satu, your object, nampak tak? This is the level of water kan? Dia akan float in between the water dengan air. So this is the condition where it is a neutral buoyancy. Now, negative buoyancy is that your buoyant force is less than weight. So definitely lah dia akan submerge, tenggelam di bahagian bawah. So we have 3 types of buoyancy. Now, this is the explanation. Kita pergi kepada next thing. Smile 1. You try to do an exercise. First, kita tengok dahulu soalan. Dia give you weight and force. And then they ask you whether that object will float or submerge. Jadi kita kena pegang konsep yang sama, the same concept. If your BF is more or equal than weight, maka it will float. If your buoyant force is less than weight, maka it will sink or submerge. Okay? So now, kita cuba tengok. Now, weight, buoyant force. Kita fokus dekat buoyant force. Buoyant force more. Okay, buoyant force is more. Kalau more, definitely it will float. Now, buoyant force 10, weight 16. Buoyant force less, maka it will submerge. Okay? Now, buoyant force 25, weight 28. Buoyant force less. If less, it will also submerge. Now, buoyant force is 40, weight is 34. So, buoyant force more. So, the object will float. Buoyant force is 7, weight is 7. So, they are equal. If equal, we go back to this concept. Once your buoyant force more or equal than the weight, alright, the object will also float. Senang kan? Boleh faham? Now, kita masuk sedikit kepada this part. Okay, ada dalam buku teks you. Actual weight and apparent weight. Sebab nanti kita nak buat activity ya. Okay, actual weight is a weight of an object in the air. Dalam keadaan objek tu berada dalam air, dalam udara, maka kita namakan dia actual weight. So, apparent weight is a weight of an object immersed in a fluid. Kita rendam, kita letakkan dalam cecair. So, actually, by using these two, we can find buoyant force. Now, how to calculate the buoyant force? Buoyant force equal to actual weight. Ini yang dalam air, weight inside the air. Kita tolak dengan apparent weight, iaitu weight di dalam cecair. Now, remember, untuk measure weight, kita akan pakai this thing. Apa dia ni? Ini adalah spring balance. And the unit of the spring balance is Newton. Alright, now we go to the next page. Kita tengok this activity. Ada dalam buku teks you. Alright, the first thing first is that they ambil glass bottle lid. Okay. And then they use a spring balance. They tie a string. Okay, connect the spring balance and the glass bottle lid, and they measure here, measure in the air, maka so dia adalah actual weight. For this one, dia ambil this glass bottle lid, dia immerse inside the water. Here is the water. So, they take a reading. So, this reading is called apparent weight. And then teacher bagi you some example lah dekat sini, okay? Example dekat sini. Kita ada, teacher dah buat siap-siap lah, contoh sahaja. Kalau nak jawapan yang betul, kita kena buat eksperimen lah dekat sekolah. So, teacher buat contoh sahaja dekat sini. Alright, teacher dah kira siap-siap. Actual weight 3, apparent weight 2. The above is the actual weight, bawah adalah apparent weight. So, our job is actually to find apakah kita punya buoyant force, and kita kena discuss whether it is submerged or float. Now, untuk buoyant force, kita always remember, untuk cari buoyant force, actual weight tolak apparent weight. Okay, actual weight minus apparent weight. So, 3 tolak 2, kita dapat 1. 1 tolak 0, 1. 5 tolak 4, 1. 4 tolak 2, 2. And then question ask you, dia akan submerge ke dia akan float? Untuk tengok dia submerge ataupun float, kita kena back to our concept. Buoyant force more or equal weight akan float. Balik pada konsep tu juga. Buoyant force less than weight, dia akan sink. Terbalik. Betul? Betul-betul. Jadi, kita cuba tengok dekat sini, okay? Here, buoyant force kita 1. Actual weight kita 3. So, buoyant force you small than weight. Maka, our object akan sink ataupun submerge. Teacher pakai submerge lah ya. Sebab submerge. Now, buoyant force 1, actual weight 1. So, equal. If equal, dia akan float. Squash ball, buoyant force 1, your weight is 5. So, buoyant force you less. Betul? Maka, the object will submerge. Buoyant force you 2, your actual weight is 4. So, buoyant force less. So, what happened? It also will submerge. Jadi, we go to this part. What is the relationship between buoyant force of an object and the condition of the object? Condition lah keadaan objek tersebut. Dia lebih kepada nak discuss dari si condition dekat sini, actually dia nak discuss about weight. So, what is the relationship between these two? So, we can say that when buoyant force is equal to the weight of an object or more, the object floats. When the buoyant force is less than the weight of an object, the object will submerge. Balik apa-apa pun dia balik kepada konsep ini juga. Okay? So, now next kita tengok density and buoyant effect. Okay, actually density ni you all dah belajar dah dekat form 1. You memang ada satu topik khas ajar density. Tapi kita buat revision balik. What is density? Density equal to mass per unit volume. So, the unit is gram per centimeter cube. And always remember, dekat sini, always remember that density of water special. Density dia adalah 1 gram per centimeter cube. So, sesuatu objek ini boleh submerge and float jika if an object, cikgu ambil this green ball ni, if objek itu more dense than water, liquid ataupun fluid, what happen? That object akan submerge. So, dekat sini cikgu ada bagi contoh, objek lebih dense daripada fluid. So, objek tu akan tenggelam, akan submerge, sink at the bottom. But if that object is less dense than water, liquid or fluid, definitely it will float. Objek itu less dense, water more dense. So, dia akan float. Very simple concept. Now, kita cuba tengok aktiviti dekat sini. Aktiviti dekat sini dia bagi dekat you mass, dia bagi dekat you volume, and then dia ask you to calculate density. Tapi macam mana cikgu dapat volume 8? Okay, kita tengok dahulu kat sini. Ini teacher buat example lah, cikgu ukur siap-siap. Okay, cikgu buat example, cikgu tulis siap-siap. You kena lengkapkan what is the density of that object and whether it float or sink inside the water. So now, to find volume, cikgu anggap cikgu buat eksperimen lah. Kata cikgu bagi dekat awak the size of this 4 object adalah 2 times 2 times 2. So, to calculate the volume, definitely kita akan pakai width, lebar dia, okay, kali dengan panjang dia, kali dengan tinggi dia, height. So, I dapat 8 cm cube. So, now how to find density? Kita back to the formula. Density is gram per centimeter cube. So, kita kena bahagi. 154.4 kita bahagi dengan, tunjuk kat sini. Okay, 154.4 kita divide dengan 8. So, answer kita adalah 19.3. Okay, kita 19.3. We go for the aluminium. 21.6 bahagi 8. 2.7. 2.7. 2.7. Okay. Bahagi. And then 1.92 bahagi 8. Okay. 1.92 divide by 8. Kita dapat 0.24. And then for wood, 5.68 divide by 5.68 divide by 8. Kita dapat 0.71. Okay. So now, kita dah dapat. Bila kita dah dapat, kita tengok dahululah. Okay. Adakah kita punya objek akan sink or float dalam water? Macam mana nak tengok? Tips dia, you always remember that kalau water, density water berapa? Density of water adalah 1 gram per centimeter cube. So, if your density of an object lebih daripada 1, definitely dia akan submerge or dia akan sink. If density of an object itu less than 1, dia akan float. Okay, kata this one kan. So, kalau object you more density of your object, okay, density of your object more than 1 gram per centimeter cube and less than 1 gram per centimeter cube, what happen? Object density is more than 1, dia akan sink. If object density dia less than 1, dia akan float. So, ini adalah konsep. Nak kita tengok. Density 19.3, more than 1, betul? So, dia akan sink. Density 2.7, more than 1. So, dia akan sink. Density 0.24, less than 1. So, dia akan float. And then, wood 0.71, density 0.71 is less than 1. So, it will float. Okay, dapatnya? Now, kita cuba tengok application of buoyant force in daily life. This one, prism hole, you dapat tengok dalam buku teks you. Apa dia prism hole ni? Senang cakap, prism hole ni dia ada pada at the side of the ship. Okay, dekat badan kapal tu, dekat tepi tu ada label ni tau. Label ni. Okay, membawa maksud tropical freshwater, tropical zone, summer. What is actually the function of this plimsoll line? Okay, line untuk plimsoll ni sebenarnya dia adalah untuk kita nak tahu determine the safe level for the ship to stay afloat. Let's say kadang-kadang kita nak isi muatan dekat kapal ke, okay, kita boleh tengok level ni. Kalau dah terlalu bawah sangat, maksudnya kebarangkalian untuk karam tu tinggi lah. Okay, so normally kita akan gunakan ini untuk kita nak tentukan the safe level for a ship to stay afloat. Okay, normally untuk cargo ship untuk safety purpose. Nah, lagi satu, ini semua orang tahu. The function of buoyant effects or buoyant force in our daily life adalah life jacket. Okay, life jacket ni semestinya design to keep you float lah. Kalau masuk dalam air ke, campak masuk dalam air, alright, untuk bagi you terapung. And ini juga dapat membantu to prevent the risk of drowning, daripada lemas. So, itu saja untuk kali ini. Bye.